The gala gleamed like it had been built to impress the gods themselves. Light pooled from chandeliers that glittered like suspended fireworks, dripping gold across marble floors polished to mirror perfection. Guests in gowns and tuxedos flowed through the hall, each step rehearsed, each laugh placed with a care theater. Waiters moved like choreographed shadows, carrying trays of champagne that sparkled under the light as though the glasses themselves were part of performance. Perfume mingled with wax and roses, creating an atmosphere so thick with artifice that even the air seemed to wear a mask. Emma Clark lingered near the entrance, half hidden in the current of motion, smoothing the navy dress she'd pulled from a clearance rack weeks ago. She had told herself it would count as classic, and in the dim light, it almost did. The zipper tugged when she breathed too honestly, and the shoes, elegant but merciless, cut into her toes with each shift of weight. They were reminders, tiny punishments for daring to step into a place that didn't feel built for her. She wasn't here to shine, or even to linger. Her plan had been simple: deliver the carefully wrapped gift she held, and leave before nerves unraveled her resolve. A waiter passed, his tray a constellation of champagne flutes, and Emma plucked one, more for camouflage than thirst. If she kept her posture steady and her gaze soft, she could be invisible. That was the plan, at least until her eyes betrayed her. There he was, Logan. His name dropped into her chest like a stone into still water. Shock, then rings of memory that spread outward, tugging her under. He looked taller than she remembered, or maybe it was the arrogance that stretched him. The tuxedo fit him like a birthright, his hair styled in the same careless perfection she used to run her fingers through without asking. And on his arm, of course, was a woman who looked like she had been carefully chosen to replace Emma. Emerald silk draped flawlessly across her frame, diamonds catching the light in obedient flashes. Together, they didn't look like a couple. They looked like inevitability. Emma froze, her lungs stumbling, and then Logan saw her. His mouth curled into that slow smile she knew too well. Once, it had felt like promise. Later, it revealed itself for what it was, a warning disguised as affection. He tipped his chin just enough to acknowledge her, already changing direction. Of course he was coming over. Logan never let a stage go unused. The room shrank, her humiliation rushing forward like a wave she couldn't outrun. She could already picture it. His voice warm with false generosity as he said her name, the glance over her dress, the polite superiority radiating from the woman at his side. The cruelty would be subtle, practiced, designed to make her feel small, without giving her any ground to stand on. She could hide, behind the floor arrangements, perhaps, but the seconds were collapsing too fast. Her gaze darted across the room, searching not for an exit, but for rescue. And there, by the staircase, stood possibility. A man, tall, still, self-contained in a charcoal suit that looked negotiated rather than bought. He wasn't playing to the crowd. His attention rested on his phone, posture unbothered, as though the gala was background noise to whatever world he carried with him. Emma moved before she could think. The decision rose from instinct, fully formed, reckless, and late. She set her champagne onto a passing tray, felt the fizz lick against her skin, and crossed the marble floor as though she had practiced walking on water. When she reached him, she didn't allow herself the courtesy of hesitation. She reached for his hand, warm, steady, startlingly real, and whispered, "Please, just play along." The man looked up, hazel eyes flecked with green, surprise flickering in them before it steadied into something else. His gaze softened, and then, without glancing past her, without so much as asking why, he spoke. "There you are, darling," he said, his voice warm enough to drape over her shoulders. "I was starting to wonder." His thumb brushed lightly across her hand, not possession, not flourish, just steadying. Behind her, Logan's voice rang out, bright enough for chandeliers to catch in his teeth. "Emma." But the stranger, this man she had grabbed like a railing when the train lurched, didn't so much as flinch. Instead, he shifted their joined hands into a gentle interlacing and raised her knuckles to his lips with the kind of ease that belonged to history, not improvisation. "I was beginning to think you'd change your mind," he murmured, as though their story had always existed, waiting only for the scene to begin. The room tilted back toward balance. Logan reached them with the smooth grace of a man who never collided with furniture. The woman at his side glided as though marble bent to carry her. Emerald whispered against stone as she sized Emma up with a smile that said everything without words. "Emma," Logan said, lifting his glass like a toast he'd already won. "Logan," she returned, her voice steady enough to surprise even herself. He glanced at their intertwined hands, calculations shifting behind his eyes. "And this is—" The stranger didn't miss a beat. "Daniel," he said smoothly, angling his body just enough to make their joined hands impossible to ignore. Her partner. The word lodged in Emma's chest like an anchor. Partner. It wasn't part of the act. It was something bigger, heavier, an ache she hadn't known she carried until now. The woman in emerald, Logan's polished accessory, offered Emma a smile that was all polite dismissal. "Lovely to meet you," she said, already done meeting. Daniel, unbothered, lifted Emma's hand again and brushed her knuckles with his lips. This time, it wasn't performance. It was a gesture of quiet possession, public, but not loud, the kind that told the room the person beside you didn't need defending, because they already belonged. "Shall we get some air?" he asked, pitched low for Emma alone. "Yes," she said instantly, seizing the lifeline. Logan's smile thinned. "Enjoy the evening." They already were. Daniel guided her through the crowd, not steering but accompanying, and people moved aside without even realizing why. Confidence was a credential, and Daniel wore it like a second skin. When they reached the terrace doors, the cool night wrapped around her, a balm to her burning skin. Only then did Emma realize she was still clinging to his hand, like it was the last rope on a cliff. The terrace opened into a hush of night. City lights scattered below like fallen stars. The air carried the scent of jasmine from the garden below, cool against Emma's flushed cheeks. She leaned against the balustrade, still holding Daniel's hand though her grip had softened. "I'm so sorry," she said, finally daring to look at him. "I shouldn't have dragged you into that. Daniel's expression was calm, his hazel eyes steady on hers. "Needed a shield." Her breath caught. He had named it so easily, without judgment, without demand. "Yes," she admitted, voice low. I couldn't let him." "Decide who you are," Daniel finished for her, his tone not as a question, but as though he understood more than she had said. Emma blinked. "Why did you play along? You didn't even know me." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Sometimes you recognize a moment that doesn't need permission. It just needs to be lived." Emma felt her chest tighten, not with panic, but with something gentler, warmer. She realized her hand still rested in his. Their fingers linked as though neither had thought to let go. "Daniel," she repeated, tasting the name. "Thank you." He tilted his head, studying her. "You don't owe me gratitude. You owe yourself kindness." The words landed like a chord struck on a piano. Unexpected, resonant, true. They didn't go back inside right away. Daniel offered her the choice, and Emma, surprised at her own boldness, chose to stay. He led her away from the noise of the gala, down a quieter corridor that ended in a stairwell. Their footsteps echoed as they climbed, neither rushing nor retreating, just existing in the strange, suspended bubble between strangers and something else. At the top, a rooftop stretched wide, crowned with strings of fairy lights left from some forgotten event. The city unfolded around them, skyscrapers standing like silent witnesses. Emma inhaled deeply, the cool air washing away the taste of champagne she hadn't even sipped. Daniel reached into his jacket, producing a flask as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Wine on a rooftop feels less like a performance, don't you think? Emma laughed, the sound breaking free from her chest, startled but genuine. "You carry wine to black-tie galas?" "I carry sanity to black-tie galas," he corrected with a grin, pouring into 2 paper cups he must have borrowed from the service trays. He handed one to her. "To surviving evenings that demand masks." She lifted the cup, her hand brushing his again, and echoed softly, "To surviving." The first sip wasn't about the wine. It was about the unspoken agreement that they were choosing this. The quiet, the view, the company, over the marble and chandeliers below. Conversation came in pieces, not forced but unfolding. Emma spoke of her love for small bakeries, the kind that baked bread slow and golden, with a bell above the door carried more welcome than any chandelier. She confessed her habit of sketching at night, filling pages with windows of houses she passed, each frame a guess at a life she'd never live. Daniel listened as though no detail was trivial. "Which is your favorite?" he asked. Emma frowned. "Favorite window?" "Yes, the one you always come back to." The question startled her. People usually asked why she wasted time drawing things that weren't hers. He asked which mattered most. "There's one," she admitted after a pause. "A small corner apartment above a flower shop. The curtains always half-drawn, and there's this little desk with a lamp that glows warm no matter the hour. I don't know who lives there, but every time I see it, I feel safe." Daniel's gaze softened, not with pity but with recognition. Maybe because it reminds you there's light in ordinary places. Emma looked at him, really looked. "Why are you here? You don't seem like someone who needs galas." He chuckled, leaning back against the rooftop wall. "Need? No. But sometimes business drags you into rooms where applause matters more than honesty." There was weight behind the words, but he didn't elaborate, and she didn't press. Some truths didn't need to be unwrapped in a single night. Hours slipped by unnoticed. The city shifted colors, from jewel black to the pale blush of dawn. Emma realized she wasn't counting the minutes, wasn't waiting for escape. She was simply there. When at last she returned home, she did so with a number tucked into her phone and a warmth that carried her through sleep. Days blurred into weeks. Messages turned into calls. Calls into walks. Walks into evenings spent sketching while he read, the silence between them as alive as conversation. Emma found herself smiling without reason, sketching more, daring more. And then, one evening, Daniel invited her out without telling her where they were going. The car stopped in front of the gallery. Emma's chest tightened. "Daniel, I can't." "You can," he interrupted gently, his hand warm at the small of her back. "Just walk with me." Inside, white walls glowed under soft light. Emma's breath caught. Her sketches, framed, hung, celebrated. The window with the half-drawn curtain. The bakery storefront. The lamplight in the rain. She turned to him, words tangled. "How?" "I wanted people to see what I saw," Daniel said simply. "The way you notice light. The way you give meaning to spaces the world passes by." Tears blurred her vision. No one's ever